It has, thankfully, the last 2 weeks we've tried to do this. I know we've missed 2 weeks, but when we've gone live, it actually has not gone live. We've had to go somewhere else.
Yeah,
So
this
thankfully,
was way too easy, baby.
Yeah, it
Maybe
worked.
you've been putting out other fires today. So
it worked this week, yes.
This was being gracious.
Just got back from our house, coming in here like squealing in on 2 tires, it feels like. We had some roof damage we found out from last week's storms. Nothing like a lot of our neighbors, some who completely lost their homes. Lots of damage, but it's raining again today, and there is water leaking in just a drip, not a major leak, but hopefully we'll be getting a new roof. But anyway, all that to say, flying around here in the rain today to get back in time for our Q&A. And Melody, here it is, 1 year. Tomorrow will be 1 year since our first Q&A with Mel and Trey. So it's been absolutely a blast this past year to do these live streams most every week. We can't say every week, but we've been pretty consistent, yes. So thank you guys. Maybe I guess I need to pull up the chat. Let's see if I can get that going here. So love to hear from you guys. Maybe some of you have been coming in and doing a part of this. Hey, there's our son.
Our son is
love
online.
You too, Gabe.
I love you too, baby.
But yeah, let us know maybe if you've been from the beginning, or maybe some of you heard about our ministry even through these weekly Q&As that we were doing. We are really excited just about the people that we've been able to meet. We've had a number of guys come to our Embark Intensive. We've had a number of ladies, I know, Melody, get involved in your ministry with ladies, Life Beyond Betrayal. I know some of the group coaching because of our weekly Q&A. Hey, Richard, good to see you.
Well, and also for those of you that are interested in a free webinar, I am doing a webinar tomorrow at 12 o'clock, and it's on codependency. And if you sometimes codependency gets a really bad rap. But for those of you that don't know anything about codependency is when I am not really standing on my own in my identity in Christ, feeling like I bring something to others, to the relationships. And therefore, I begin to become others dependent, sucking the life out of others. Many times that can be done through helping. Sometimes it's done through controlling. So really, and honestly, I would say Christianity and codependency sometimes is a very gray world. So if you want to learn about the difference in caretaking, oh, that's hilarious. Sorry, I was distracted by a question that is a friend of our son's. So anyway, but if you are interested in the codependency webinar, it is going to be tomorrow at 12 o'clock. If you want to register, email me, melody@undoneredone.com, and I will send you the link. Even if you cannot be there tomorrow at 12 o'clock Central Standard Time, you will get the link basically emailed to you for the webinar. So join us tomorrow, and then we start our codependency group, coaching group, the following Thursday. So if you want any information about codependency, what it is, about the webinar, signing up for the webinar, registering for the webinar, or the group coaching that starts April 8th, which is Thursday week, which is my birthday. So we'll be, I will definitely give you some information on that. So Haley Sue asked us a question, Trey, and I'm going to let you answer it.
I'll add it to the broadcast here.
Gabe told me to ask, who is your favorite child?
Yeah. So we have autocorrect on ours too, and sometimes Gabe becomes Gabe. But yeah, she meant to say Gabe. Gabe our
wants
son.
us to say that Gabe is his favorite, is our favorite child, because he is the one that shows up to our live Q&A. In fact, we talked a couple weeks ago, Trey, about bringing Gabe onto the live Q&A. So Gabe, you may not be too many weeks away from joining us on this, where you can talk a little bit about being a child, a product of divorce, and how that impacted you and what that looks like, because there's a lot of parents that would love some advice from somebody who's walked through it that's a child.
That's right. So we will refrain from asking the question about favorite child, but I will say, Gabe,
they're all our
favorites.
favorites.
Gabe has shown up a number of weeks in our live Q&A, which makes us wonder how much work he's actually getting done at school too. You could actually go that route at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. But So we'll put the webinar link in the show notes here on the links below. So if you're watching this live on YouTube or on Facebook, you're watching the replay, by the time we get the replay going, the link will be there. So it has been a year, and man, what a year it has been. And then just want to, I mentioned the storms from last week. Last Thursday was really, really crazy. With all kinds of tornado activity going on here in central Alabama. We had people flying in for our Braveheart Intensive. We had men coming from literally all over the country flying into Birmingham, so we're grateful that everybody was safe. And other than watching the water rise up on Smith Lake all weekend, everything went well. So we do have a few questions. Today will probably be a little bit shorter just based on the questions that we've got in. So let's go ahead, Melody, and get to those. I think you've got them printed out here.
Yes. So here is our first question. Emotional triggers remain a really big issue for me. I've been diagnosed with PTSD because of all the trauma sex addiction has brought into my life. Can you map out a good trigger reduction strategy for the betrayed spouse as well as an effective response for the sex addict? And Trey, so I'll answer the first part of this, and then you can answer the response from the sex addict. So I really did some thinking about this, and I teach on this some with our ladies that have been through. Oh, Tal's on here too. That's incredible. So let's just talk about
our boys are competing for the favorite
quickly. What a trigger is, and obviously we talk a lot about triggers. Related to betrayal, sex addiction, pornography, things like that. But any and every one of us can be triggered. I was actually thinking about, what would be an emotional trigger that I have right now. One emotional trigger that I can actually think of quite quickly is if I am dismissed or disrespected. So like, if I'm saying something and I don't feel like you're listening to me, if I don't feel like my voice is being heard, things like that, that is a fairly simple trigger, not related to betrayal trauma. And so there's some specific things when we get triggered that we need to do, whether that's within a context of just a friendship. It could be a work associate. Let's say somebody continues to bully you at work or dismiss the work and effort that you put into your job. Maybe you've got a bossy boss, things like that. But let's just talk specifically what we can do when we have those triggers. And I like to kind of think through 5 things. And so the very first thing you need to do, because what happens with a trigger is it basically takes us back to an event or to something that has happened. And in that moment, it makes us feel as if we are reliving that moment in that very same second. So let's say, for instance, you have been through betrayal trauma and you are experiencing some PTSD type symptoms. And let's say you get triggered every time your husband looks at his phone because maybe the phone is where he looked at pornography, or maybe his phone is where he began in chat rooms where that inevitably ended in infidelity. So every time he's looking at his phone, in the back of your head, you might be triggered to think, is he talking to another woman? Is he in a chat room? Is he looking at pornography? So that can feel very real. So the very first thing that I think that we need to do is we need to pause and we need to begin to breathe, okay? Self-regulation, regrounding ourselves is going to be really, really important. And I like to think of like quick ways that we can reground ourselves is through our senses, okay? What are some of the colors that I can take in that moment? I'll maybe touch a texture. I've heard ladies say that they'll grab a blanket, maybe put a weighted blanket on, something that is kind of distracting them in a healthy way in that moment, just to come back to themselves. Breathing, Trey talks about box breathing. I do too in my courses. And that's basically where you breathe and you inhale for a count of 4, you exhale for a count of 4, hold it. Sorry, I just messed that up. You inhale for a count of 4, you hold your breath for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, and then hold your breath for a count of 4. And I usually tell women when they're starting this out, draw a square when you're doing it, and it's fairly easy. So deep breathing, pausing, maybe going out and looking at the clouds, laying on the ground, and putting your hands on your stomach, or sometimes people will put their hand on their heart. But the goal is to slowly come back to yourself, because if we're not careful, when we get triggered and we feel like it is actual reality, we can lose ourselves.
Get into the fight, flight, or
Right.
freeze, the amygdala part of our brain, which
and we go
want to
into
get out
total react mode, okay? So once we've breathed a little bit, what we want to begin to do is we want to acknowledge the trigger that's here. We're giving ourselves permission. It's knocked at the door, and it's coming in, and we're going to sit with that trigger. We're not going to shame ourselves. I can't believe this is here. I went through this 5 years ago. Why in the world am I being triggered? All that are things that are going to begin to start happening, and that can suck us down a rabbit hole. So we're going to give that trigger permission to be here. We're going to acknowledge it, and then we're going to name it. Okay? Here are some other triggers. A woman comes on the TV, and she's in a 2-piece bathing suit, okay, or a bikini. That could be a trigger for a woman who's walked through betrayal. Certain parts of town, if there was indiscretions in certain parts of town, a hotel, maybe a restaurant that your spouse went to with somebody else. All those things can be triggers. And so what we want to do is we want to recognize them, we want to acknowledge them, and we want to name them, okay? Just like the tornadoes that Trey talked about. I used to be a school teacher. We had an EMS plan when there was a tornado. We pull out the drawer, and here's our procedures for that. This is kind of an EMS plan for you when you're triggered, okay? We're going to acknowledge it. We're going to ask that. We're going to sit with that trigger for a minute, and we're going to name them. What are the triggers, if you can name those? Like I said, a restaurant, a song, maybe a romantic song could be that. Trey, can you think of just some other specific triggers? Restaurants,
got 'em
commercials.
Yeah, I think the big thing we've talked about in past weeks is sometimes when we're triggered, we can get so filled with shame, or maybe the enemy just has such a heyday on the fact that we are triggered. And
Right.
so I would just encourage you to not beat yourself up for the trigger. The triggers happen. It's now knowing that you've got tools in your toolbox that Melody's going through to deal with the triggers when they come. Because if we spend all of our energy beating ourselves up for having the trigger,
Right.
then we'll never get to some of the healthy ways of responding to the trigger.
Okay. So also we're recognizing it, acknowledging it, we're naming it, and then we're also going to give ourselves permission to have some emotion around that. We've regulated ourselves, so we're out of fight and flight, but we're going to give ourselves, do we need to grieve a little bit? Do we need to be angry? Again, we can be angry. There's lots of things that we can give you all practical tips on. You know, you can go throw eggs at trees. You can go get a stick and beat a tree. You can take a boxing class. You can break dishes. I mean, I've told ladies before to go to Goodwill and get a set of dishes and write on a Sharpie on the things that really make you mad, and then go somewhere and break dishes. Lots of different things that you can do. Number 3, we're going to get curious about the trigger, okay? Because the trigger is almost this, it's something that's happening internal, but it's almost this external thing. But curious means we're going to get under the hood. What are some of the messages that are coming out of that trigger, okay?
Yeah, so the trigger could be like the light on the dashboard, telling us that something needs to be maybe attended to, something needs to be seen, and then you can get under the hood then once you've seen the light on the dashboard.
So getting curious about a trigger could be, what are some of the messages that come out of that, okay? A narrative, a negative narrative that shame loves to say sometimes is, he's always going to cheat. This is, this is going to happen again. When's the other shoe going to drop? You know, it almost sends you again down this space where if we don't identify, just write out what the messages are that you're getting about that trigger, because we're stepping into this from a place of curiosity, not shame, not blame, not judgment. And so also, when do they happen? When do these triggers happen? Do they happen at that time of the month? Do they happen during HALT? Trey and I use an acronym all the time: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. When I am super tired, let's say I didn't sleep well, or it's been a super difficult day, my filter is not going to be functioning at high capacity like it would if I do have sleep. So I know for me personally, I might be more likely to have a trigger when I'm sleepy. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If maybe you're alone, maybe what's getting triggered is abandonment. And so what does that look like? Okay. So then you are going to name all those triggers and then write down on a scale of 1 to 10 we
both can't talk. The magnitude of
the magnitude. I couldn't think of the word. Like, let's say, disrespect or, being dismissed is a 5. You might have some triggers that really trigger you and they're like a 9, 10. But go on and rate them. Again, we're not judging them. We're just naming them. There's a lot that when we can look at it in black and white and we can get it on paper and out of our bodies, it really does help us with a plan. All right. Number 4, you're going to identify the triggers with any kind of familiarity or themes. Do they happen related to people or places, names, holidays? Many times can be triggers. Anniversaries can be triggers. And I'm not talking about a wedding anniversary. I'm talking the anniversary of a disclosure or anniversary of when you found out. Knowing those things and writing those things down can really help you. And that's what this is about. We're creating a plan to help us move through this.
So we know there's an anniversary coming up, being mindful and not just being blindsided.
Yeah, I have a number of ladies that will usually tell me, next week is an anniversary date for D-Day, or next week is when I found out. And knowing that beforehand really allows them to have a plan for that day. We'll usually say, reach out to so-and-so that day, or call me that day. Maybe plan something fun. We even talk about redeeming some of the painful places that you've experienced. And then number 5 is actually to begin to reframe that. We're going to bring in perspective. One of the ways that we can reframe that would be, my husband, that trigger that we talked about earlier. My husband, every time he looks at his phone, I feel like he's well, that's when we're going to ask ourselves, is he cheating right now? Is he in a chat room? It may even be that you say, sweetie, I'm really triggered by you looking at your phone. Can you just let me know what you're looking at right now? And he says, actually, I'm checking my email. I got a work email that came in 5 minutes ago. Okay, that is going to provide you perspective, logic. We want to bring some logic into this, but then we also want to bring some biblical perspective in this. A lot of times we try to handle all these things with God over there. What would it look like for you to bring God into this moment with you and to bring some gospel truth around this? It's not to dismiss what you're feeling. It's not to try to make you happy if you're angry, but it's just to provide some perspective. Is this really happening? Is this the truth? And then bringing some truth in that. And then I think you just finish with asking the Lord to join you in this moment. And then what's something actionable that you can do out of this? So that's primarily for the betrayed spouse, or if you're in the middle of a trigger. But Trey, address what you would.
Well, I want to. Brandy says on Facebook, I'm so glad you're talking about triggers. They have turned a good day into a bad day really quick, and that's really true. Thanks, Brandy, for being here and for your statement. They usually come out of left field, and that's it can be a good day, just minding your own business, and something happens, and then it's like a volcano. Just there's the emotion. There's, like Melody said earlier, it feels like we're right back to the day of the event, the moment the event happened.
Yeah, and Brandy, if I can just use just a very current story of what Trey and I are dealing with in this very moment. We are about to put our house on the market. And so obviously when you're putting your house on the market, you're kind of tidying up things, you're cleaning out closets and all that type of thing, trying to present your home as best as it can be. One of my triggers, if I'm being completely honest with you, is around finances. And really Trey too, both being married before and this time. There have been some real hard times financially. And so sometimes a trigger financially, let's say a college bill comes in, or 2 college bills. We have 2 kids in college. So 2 college bills come in. And sometimes in that moment, I have to breathe. I'm like, I'm not an orphan. God, I'm a well-provided daughter of the King, and I have to begin to remember those things, because I can be an orphan in a split second. So today, Trey is going home, and here's this, water dripping down through a bedroom. And again, I am starting to add up numbers in my head. And oh my gosh, we're about to show our house next week. And then that's going to happen? And are we going to have a roof in the middle of that? You know what I'm saying? And you can spiral so quickly. So again, just being able to identify, okay, I'm not an orphan. I have a house to sleep in. I have, a roof over my head, and just beginning to bring some of that truth back. So a trigger could really be anything. So you can actually apply some of this to whatever the trigger is, but having it written out for you will really help you. It's almost like go grab that EMS plan, that trigger plan for yourself when you're having that. So Trey, I kind of hijacked you talking about from the sex addict. How would you want the sex addict to respond to the wife when she's triggered?
Yeah, I think just knowing that if you haven't done enough work in shame, then when our wives are triggered, then it's easy to get defensive, to deflect, or to go into the other ditch that when shame presents itself. We talked about this on a number of past Q&As, but that kind of wallowing or self-loathing. Yes, I'm a worthless piece of crap, or defending, because what it does, she's taken right back to that place, and she may say something as if it just happened out of the trigger. And we know it hasn't just happened. And so now we want to get defensive, maybe something like, well, how long is this going to be held over my head? Or I said I was sorry. That's been 2 years ago. I can't believe that's still the way we get really defensive or deflective. And now that only makes the trigger worse for her, because now our current behavior feels like the old behavior. Because what that's done is her trigger has taken us into a place of shame, and maybe her trigger has become our trigger now. And so now both are triggered, and that's really when it can spiral out of control fast, and we get into this unhealthy dance. And so I think if you are maybe the offending spouse and your spouse has gotten triggered, one, just as quickly as you can, realize, okay, or try to realize this is not about the now. She's gotten triggered. And that trigger is bringing a lot of old stuff into the present. So you also need to breathe, because you need perspective. You need to get out of the fight, flight, or freeze, or make sure you don't go into that fight, flight, or freeze, and just realize what's going on, and just, even get curious, okay, what does my spouse need right now? And I would just encourage, I am so sorry. It sounds like you're triggered. And then just speak to.
What can I do for you?
Yeah, speak to that older stuff. Don't defend yourself. Because whatever she's saying, it's not about the here and now. Because here's the thing, is you don't allow yourself to go to that place of shame, as you are resting and standing and living from your true identity as a beloved son, then you can engage her without doing the whole defend, deflect, or grovel. You can engage her from a place of true identity, which is a strength that maybe she's never really seen before, because before something triggers our shame and we're either out of there or we're trying to shut it down in a hurry. So TJ, good to see you. TJ is tuning in on Facebook, looks like. It has been too long, brother. Hope everything is going well in your world, and you are quite welcome. It is our privilege to step into these messy places with those in ministry and pastors who often don't have a place where they feel like they can be real. So thanks for being here on the live stream, and also for saying hello. All right, we got another question, 2333.
You're going to read it?
Let me get it up. Sorry we didn't have time to print all these out today. Was this one?
Yeah. If you want
all right, so this is, I think I know where this question is coming from and where it's going. So I'm hoping you can answer a couple of questions and shed some light. My husband had an emotional affair and a financial affair, I think, or maybe a physical affair.
A physical affair.
He met a very young girl who gave him words of affirmation and requested money and gifts every 2 weeks. According to my understanding, there was no deep emotional conversation between the two. According to my husband, it was words that were given to him based on his ego. However, I look at it as a scam. There are young girls in our society that call themselves sugar babies. My question is, how do you view the whole situation? Thank you. Your input is greatly appreciated.
Yeah, and there is a term, sugar babies, but there's also a term out there, sugar daddies, who are paying girls to, take care of them physically, complimentary things like that. So
yeah, so I
there's
don't
kind of
know.
two different terms.
Yeah,
out
and
there.
the question is, how do you view the whole situation? I think you've done a good job explaining the situation. I think what you're asking, and again, I don't know if you're tuning in live, maybe you can clarify. What I hear in this question is maybe, is my husband an addict based on this, or did he just get scammed? And trying to maybe see it different. You're talking about there was no deep emotional conversation. It was just about words of affirmation.
But it was a physical affair.
Yes.
So
well, assuming that's a physical affair or maybe a financial affair. I don't know. But what I hear is do we see this different based on these facts instead of a full-blown, maybe another type of affair? And I would say,
I guess we can say just right out of the gate, I want you to answer that, but your husband's not a victim. So if there's any theme of, well, my husband got scammed, your husband chose to step into something and participate. So he is a active participant and not a victim.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is basically there's something going on in your husband that this worked, right? Whether it's a scam, and yes, there are those out there, but they're preying on people who are looking for certain things, just like I don't know, just I don't know really
Maybe
why.
he had some vulnerabilities that made him
absolutely. But
that.
I think if I was talking to your husband, if he came to our ministry, here's what I would say. However it happened, it has exposed some deeper root issues that you need to address, because otherwise there was some broken, unhealthy places that made you vulnerable to this type of scam or to a young girl who was giving you affirmation or whatever. There's some insecurities or maybe some questions needing that affirmation or what have you. So as far as how do we see the situation, I think the path of recovery would look very, very similar, both for you, who was the spouse who was asking this question, who was betrayed, but also for the husband who was the betrayer. I don't know that we would see it a lot different than there's any number of ways people find our ministry, but once they're in our ministry, what we're focused on is the deeper root issues, not the branches of behavior. Some guys come to our ministry and they're trying to determine, am I really a sex addict or not? And I'd kind of go past that question because I don't know right off the bat if they are or not. But my question usually to them are there things in your life that willpower is not fixing that's causing problems in your life? If that's the case, then a path of recovery is not going to hurt. Being hung up on this label of addiction or addict or whatever, it kind of speaks to that hierarchy that we don't want that label because that means we're really broken. And the fact is, whether we want to put a label on it or not, if something is blown up in your life due to unwanted sexual behavior, that needs to be addressed, right? Don't get hung up on whether you're not an addict or not, because none of us want to be an addict. And so you're going to probably err on, oh, no, I don't need that help, right. Rather than really just doing a deep dive into the
Well, and
recovery.
I love what Sharon Hirsch says. She says, an idol is anything that we go outside of ourselves to find rescue. It's basically a form of worship. So, definitely your husband had some things. And really, when you're stepping outside of your marriage to do anything, that is a character issue. So there definitely needs to be some character things that he can look at so that this doesn't repeat itself. I mean, that would be part of the work that needs to be had here. But I will say that this is kind of a warning for women whose husbands have either stepped into pornography or online chat rooms or sugar babies or whatever that looks like. If we're not careful, we can really get into a place where we begin to defend the very person that has created this indiscretion and this very painful event for you. Again, your husband is not a victim. He made choices that have created chaos and confusion for both of you. And instead of maybe trying to say, oh, there's girls out there scamming, and yes, there's all kinds of people out there scamming, it's really more you allowing yourself and giving yourself permission to say, you really hurt me, and we both need help. You need help to figure out why you did this, and I need help to heal from what's happened. And that can be a really beautiful place for the two of y'all to really spend your time and energy, because I have had many a women who come back after the fact and they've had to defend their husbands or this the affair partner, and I'm like, it takes two people to have an affair. And so he is just as guilty as this other person. And so don't let that distract you. The enemy wants to distract, discourage, destroy, kill. And so don't get distracted by all the emotion that's around here. You do have some financial betrayal because he's used some of your personal money for this, but you also have a relationship betrayal that needs to be healed. And so I really encourage you to step into our programming, whether that's group coaching or Life Beyond Betrayal or virtual calls on Monday nights, and really let this be a season about you and you getting the healing so that you can move forward from this.
Yep. All right, let's go to another question.
We both have like funky monkey going on.
Well, this
in the
pollen that hopefully is getting washed away with all this rain.
Did you say hey to Tao?
I did.
Okay,
Our
Hey,
oldest
Tao.
son is also here. They're got dueling sons.
We're gonna bring that. Trey, is there a way that we can do Q&A where we bring in our kids, because not all of our kids live here?
Yeah, we could.
Very good. Oh, split screen, right?
Yep, we could do that.
Maybe we can do a kid Q&A, adult
I
Q&A.
keep writing down the time for this new question.
Because I keep talking?
Yes, because you keep talking. So, all right, let's
Sorry, baby.
All right, so this is another question that came in by email. My husband and I have been married for 13 years. He's been struggling with sexual addiction for a very long time, and I didn't really know the extent of the addiction until last year. We were in a recovery program for almost a year when my husband relapsed again. We then entered a healing separation, and he relapsed again. So my question, is divorce the only answer at this point? He doesn't want to divorce but can't stop the lies and sexual acts. I love him, but the pain of relapse is unbearable. And there's a follow-up question, can you still support them while divorced, or do I just completely let go? Really good questions, and a really tough place to be.
Really
So
tough
sorry
place to be.
where you find yourself. Mel, do you want to answer?
Yeah, whether or not you choose to stay in the marriage or not, I definitely think that separation could be a really, really helpful place for the two of you. It allows...
They're in that now.
They're into separation right now.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
I
he
didn't hear that
relapsed
part.
again during that.
He relapsed again. Yeah, Trey, you may want to answer this. I mean, at some point, if the lying and the acting out continues to happen, many times you don't have a choice but to love and let go. And definitely divorce would not be a place where you then are in a co-helper, co-parenting role. That really, for all of us, until we get to the end of ourselves, we're going to continue to run to things. And so not only does he have to, work on some of the addiction, but definitely really needs some help with a licensed, trained professional on the deception and why that continues to be a part. Maybe he needs more recovery. I don't necessarily know his path, but your path is to continue to get the help and the community and the support around you to make a decision. Because I just know for me personally, I didn't quit loving Trey when I moved into separation and ultimately divorced him. I loved him enough to say, I'm withering on the vine and I cannot continue to do this because it's going to destroy me when there's active addiction going on. And so, sometimes the most loving thing that you can do is say, I'm going to let you go.
Well, I think the answer to the second question, if you do choose divorce, it's going to be really hard to support them after your divorce.
No,
probably
it's not your role.
that would be some codependency, wanting to still come through for them after there's a divorce. So that's the answer to the second question. The other piece that I was going to say as it relates to your first question is you're in a healing separation. I certainly want to validate the pain of every relapse. But I would also, and every situation is a little bit different, I do believe, first of all, slips and relapses are a part of recovery, unfortunately, but we can also learn a lot from slips and relapses. One of the things that and I've got through our program at route1520.com, I've got a whole lesson on mining slips. We don't encourage slips. We don't want there to be relapses, but actually those are opportunities, almost like a new crash scene where CSI shows up gathering new data about the addictive system that's at work in our lives specifically. What maybe more clarity to our triggers, those kind of things. So here's the way I would look at it. Is he, so there has been a relapse. Certainly it's been painful for you, but here's how I would look at it differently.
Multiple relapses.
Yeah. Is he covering it up? Did you have to discover it again? Is he forthright with that? Did he talk to people in his recovery plan about the relapse?
Is he ramping up his recovery plan?
But just are there things that he's doing, to prevent that? Is he back to some of the old, maybe defend, deflect, and then made it about everybody else, and then finally, those would just be some things, because all relapses are not the same. If somebody is relapsing and they're back in full-blown denial, if they are basically choosing that over time, still covering up. We've had folks recently who've come through a full disclosure only to find out later that they were acting out the whole time leading up to and after the disclosure. Those would be red flags that this is really what they want. And so, but if you see that there's been a slip or relapse and it hasn't been a continual thing, they brought it into the light very quickly after
They're
that.
getting a lot of help around it.
Yeah, they basically are working a recovery program around the slip, that they're doing things that are not just things that you're asking for, but they're doing things that you can see, hey, I'm not asking them to jump through all these hoops. He's not doing all these things for me. I see, yes, there's been a relapse, which I hate. It was painful, but I also see how he's responding differently in this relapse. That would just be something, again, don't know all the details behind that, but just something to look at, because, we would never say cut and dried, okay, somebody relapses, boom, then you need to go ahead and divorce. You get them 3 chances, but just to see how they're responding to that.
At some point, you do have to say, how many times am I going to allow myself to go through this? One of the things that you did say that kind of popped out to me, we were in a recovery program for almost a year when my husband relapsed again. Then we entered into healing separation and he relapsed again. So I would kind of want to know, if I was his spouse, how does he view recovery? Because if recovery is going to be a lifelong path for him, that is very different than somebody who thinks, I'm a year in, I'm one and done, I'm better, and it continues to relapse. That would probably be something that I'd want to unpack too. Well,
it sounds like he was in recovery when he relapsed.
But I'm just saying, recovery would be something that he needs to embrace for the rest of his life. Yeah. So, just kind of finding out from there, what that would look like. So, yeah, you can't continue to have hope. And again, the purpose of healing separation is to kind of wake you both up, but also get help apart from one another. And there's a relapse. Again, I liked what Trey said, is to kind of find out, was he lying? Did he reach out to his community? Did you have to find out?
Yeah, and also the nature of the relapse. Was it a relapse with a prostitute? Was it a relapse with, a past affair partner? Was it a relapse with, a night looking at pornography?
Was it just masturbation?
Again, all
was
of
it
those
masturbation? I don't want to ever say just, but was it masturbation and porn? Things like that. Yeah.
But there are maybe different ways, and what's like the old stuff, and what you see as maybe things heading in another direction. Because with recovery, whether it be alcohol, drugs, sexual addiction, whatever the recovery is, and anybody who's been in recovery, there's their version of this. It's progress, not perfection.
Right.
With this, slips and relapses are a part of it, and that's where you need to know where the boundaries need to be set and what you are willing to do and put up with. Certainly, if somebody's saying, "Well, relapse is a part of it," so sorry I relapsed again, but get over it, then that's not really the heart of someone who's really wanting to change. But what you're observing there. Certainly would never say hard and fast, okay, he's had 3 relapses over a 5-year period, so you need to divorce him. But you know more of what's going on there, and hopefully you've got folks in your church and friends and others who are helping you with those decisions as well, observing what's going on.
I'd love to walk with you through it too, so feel free to reach out to me at my email address, melody@undoneredone.com, and I'll be happy to get you the help that you need to.
Yep. So we've got a lot of things we've kind of referred to. One thing, I don't think we have any more questions coming in, but we do have a new program at Route 1520, route1520.com. You can click program at the top or go ahead and get started. and it'll take you to a page for $9.97 a month. You've got access to our online community, all of our My Grace Journey course, ongoing webinars just for guys on this recovery journey. And then also our next Embark Men's Recovery Intensive will be April the 29th through May 2nd. So coming up here in just a few weeks, we'll have our 24th Embark Men's Recovery Intensive. So looking forward to that. It is filling up fast, so if you or somebody you know are interested in doing that deep dive 4 days with the help of a therapist to get to those root issues that's driving unwanted sexual behavior, do consider joining us for that. And guys, we missed y'all for the last couple of weeks. Thank you guys for tuning in today. For those of you maybe watching the replay, we'll have all the links and everything to Melody's webinar that starts tomorrow on codependency. Maybe go to our Facebook page, share that maybe with your family and friends. Many of us have folks who need that message.
And this is not just for women, so women and men can be a part of this codependency.
Well, guys, thanks for tuning in. So glad that you have joined us, and hope you guys stay safe wherever you are, and happy Easter. We haven't even said that. It's this Easter week. So what a great Holy Week we're in, and what amazing things we have to celebrate. So we do hope you and your family have a great Easter weekend. Love you guys.
Love y'all.